On 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
We make it very easy for you to get on the air and talk to your neighbors.
Could someone talk to me?
And the world.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
The podium is yours.
Impressive.
AM 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com.
Live from Whitney Media, 1460 WVOX, this is The Rabbi and the Judge, with Rabbi Amiel Wall, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Israel of New Rochelle, and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman. You can join the Rabbi, the Judge, and their guests at 914-636-0110. Now, The Rabbi and the Judge. Here's Rabbi Amiel Wall and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman.
Good afternoon, listeners. This is Barbara Fix filling in for the Rabbi and the Judge. And we'll miss you today, but we have a wonderful Renaissance man, an absolute treat for all those people out there who are just wondering what exactly is going on in the Middle East. We will get the basics, we'll get an understanding, and we're going to have a fresh perspective, and then you'll get it. If you have any questions for our guest, don't forget to call us at 914-636-0110. Who is this mystery guest? Our Renaissance man is Mark Langfan from New York. He's a New York-based attorney who has done multiple things. He has a BA in mathematics. He was top of his class, top of his law class, a real, as I say, a genius is in our midst here in Westchester today. What Mark got involved with was understanding by creating a three-dimensional topographical model of the map of the Middle East to try and explain. I met Mark when he was explaining to me how critical water was. Mark began by explaining to me today, and will explain to our audience, what is going on in the Middle East is partly based on the oil reserves, real oil and natural gas, and the fight between the Sunnis and the Shiites for control of the Middle East, and how it affects you, me, in New York and around the world. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for coming in and showing us and inspiring us to understand what is going on.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I feel especially wonderful because I was actually born in this area. For the first 12 years of my life, I lived in New Rochelle, almost a mile away from where we are here. So it brought back wonderful memories coming back to New Rochelle today. Thank you for having me, too.
Is it possible, I know we're looking at a visual map that you have had made, incredible detail, three-dimensional. Is it possible to try and explain to the audience who are just listening, possibly driving in their cars, bewildered by what is happening in Iraq? There's a lot of blame going on, as we know. We should have done that, we should do that, we should have. But we really want an understanding of what is going to happen and how to handle what's going on.
Yes, it is very possible to explain. The big picture is, I had a law school professor who was a tax professor, and he said, in anything you ever look at, you have to ask yourself one question. Where's the cash? Where's the cash going to? Where's the cash going from? So in the Middle East, the cash, if you will, the analogy, is oil. And if you know where the oil is, then you can start to look at the parties' actions and try to understand if, in fact, their actions are derived from where the oil is. And that's the whole ball of wax, because once you understand where the oil is in the Middle East and in the inextricable mix of these countries, everything that's going on all of a sudden becomes really ABC, and you understand it. And the basic concept is not everywhere in Texas is there oil, meaning Texas is a big oil state, but not every place where you put down an oil rig is all of a sudden oil. The same thing applies in Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq. Not every place you put down an oil, all of a sudden there's a gusher. So when you look at it that way and you look at the topography, what happens is all of a sudden the where the oil is in Saudi Arabia becomes very, very focused. And for instance, in Saudi Arabia's situation, 95% of Saudi Arabia's oil is in the northern, eastern part of the country. There's almost no oil in the rest of the country. And it is really abutting Iran and in the Persian Gulf area. The same thing with Iraq. You look at Iraq, almost all the oil is in the eastern part of the country. And with Iran, which is to the right of these countries, or to the east of these countries, all of the oil is in the west of the country. So there's actually a triangle area that is shared by all of these three countries, as well as the other Gulf kingdoms.
That's the key, Mark, is that we tended to think that there's oil everywhere in Saudi Arabia, and it's absolutely not true. It's in a small area of Saudi Arabia. So it's almost like that triangle, each of these three countries, the three critical countries that we're looking at in history now are Iran, Iraq, as well to a certain extent Saudi Arabia. So they all kind of border
each other.
They border each other
at the triangle
that has all the oil. So if any country grabs that triangle, they get the oil. That's where the cash is.
That's where the cash is. So what is going on in Iraq is when we left Iraq, the way we left Iraq was we sort of were claiming it was going to be a democracy. But the same way that the oil is in certain areas, in these countries, there are certain areas that are sects. So where the sect is the majority. So Iraq as a country has about 60% Shia, about 25 to 30% Sunni, and about 15% Kurdish.
That's key as well, because we were kind of led to believe, the majority of us out there in the world, that in fact this is a Sunni Shiite war. It was between Iran and Iraq, and we thought this was just clear cut. We knew that Iran was Shiite, and we thought Iraq was Sunni, and there was just going to be the balance where let them fight each other. You're educating us now. That is not the case.
Not only is it not the case, in that percentages that I just gave you, one would say, oh, well, it's sort of a homogeneic percentage, meaning all over Iraq, it's the same percentage. But that's not the case. Each sect is actually a majority in its given area. So to the east, next to Iran, is the Shia majority. In the west is the Sunni majority. In the north is the Kurdish majority. Each has its own majorities. But what happened is when you combine them, the Shiite sect has 60%. So what happened was we did not get a democracy where the people rule. We got a sectocracy where the sect that was 60% became the ruler. And so what in effect happened was we empowered the Shiites to become the dictators of the entire country. And what then happened was, of course, who was going to control the Shiite dictator in Iraq? Iran. So we, in effect, gave the entire Iraq to Iran, which then in effect created the following situation. You had Iran, you had Iraq being controlled by Iran, and then when you go west, you have Syria. And Syria is an Alawite ruled country where the Alawites are again a sect that only formed, believe it or not, about 10 to 15% of Syria, and they are a Shiite sect as well. Not only are they a Shiite sect, they're a Shiite sect that's a Twelver, which is the same branch of Shiaism that Iran is, where you believe the 12th Mahdi is going to come. It's basically a Jesus Christ in the form of the 12th Mahdi. And so when you look at those three countries going west to the Mediterranean, you had an embryonic Shiite caliphate.
That's important because we keep talking about a caliphate and nobody understands what is the caliphate. Is it Sunni? Is it Shia? Is it a combination? Are these people going to be joining together and the Muslims being peaceful together? And now you're explaining to us that our actions now recently in Iraq by empowering al-Maliki as a Shiite, we are helping to create a Shiite caliphate.
And this Shiite, now you understand why is Iran so concerned about protecting Assad, because Assad was the key last piece to getting to the Mediterranean.
Very interesting, and that's a port. Let's come back to that. We're talking to Mark Langfan. We'll be back in a short while for more of his wisdom.
With business news at 20 minutes past the hour, every hour. Here's the latest update from the Fox Business Network on WVOX Worldwide.
From the Fox Business Network, car makers Honda, Mazda, and Nissan are all recalling more than 3 million cars due to defective airbags. The airbags were made by the Takata Corporation, and it's estimated that 1 million of the Hondas with the defective airbags are on American roads. The cars are being recalled because the airbag could explode and spray metal shrapnel at the people it's supposed to protect. The Supreme Court is making it tougher for investors to join together to sue corporations for securities fraud. Now, did you have orange juice at breakfast today? No? Well, apparently you're not alone. Sales of orange juice have fallen to their lowest level in 12 years. Along with more choices for breakfast beverages, higher orange prices are also a factor. With the Fox Business Report, I'm Elizabeth McDonald.
If you want to work until you drop, reduce your standard of living in retirement, or lose more of your hard-earned money in the stock market, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to generate a steady, predictable income, I'm talking real wealth and financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. A free report is now available that reveals the money-making secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. It reveals how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and wealth-building power without risking your money in the Wall Street casino. To get your free special report, visit bankonyourself.com. That's bankonyourself.com.
This is WVOX at 1460 for Mamaroneck, Bronxville, and Waikagill.
WVOX.
Now back to The Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX with Rabbi Amiel Wall, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Israel of New Rochelle, and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman. Now, once again, The Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX.
Hello. So what was happening was Obama had given Iraq to Iran, and there was no residual force left, U.S. force, to in any way temper al-Maliki's sectarian compulsion. And there was nothing to say to him, don't do that because you're going to alienate the Sunnis. So then what happened was the Syrian civil war between the Sunnis and Assad happened. And what then occurred was Iran needed Iraq to funnel and to ship weapons to Syria. So in effect, what was happening was you did have a Shiite caliphate that was using the contiguity of its landmass to, in effect, perpetuate itself. Now, obviously, who is going to be very upset by this? The Sunnis. So you then had the Sunnis really become extremely worried, including Saudi Arabia, principally Saudi Arabia, but the Sunnis in western Iraq as well. And about a year and a half ago, what had happened was the Western Sunnis in Iraq were protesting these arms shipments through their territory to Syria. And they were peacefully demonstrating and laying down their bodies on the road. Well, what happened was you had a massacre where they were shot up and about 10 of them were killed. And I wrote an article about a year and a half ago that was the beginning of the Sunni jihad against this caliphate. So really what you are seeing today has been brewing for a very long time. It's not something that just popped up. It's been brewing, it's been violent, it's been eating away at the core of the Middle East, because the black gold triangle that holds this 56% of the world's oil supply is the heart of the Middle East. And when I say the heart of it, what in the triangle is in effect straddling to the east the Shia and to the west the Sunnis. So it is really the San Andreas Fault, if you will, of the Middle East, because you've got the Sunnis fighting for a larger share of the black gold, and you've got the Iranians trying to fight for a larger share of the black gold triangle. And this is a prescription for the war between the Sunnis and the Shias that you are seeing played out on the TV today. But you can only understand it if you first ask yourself, where exactly are the fields? In what general geographic area are the fields? And if anybody wants to see my graphics, all they need to do is Google black gold triangle presentation, and it will come up, and you'll be able to see how I derived the black gold triangle, and you'll see many other maps that really give you an X-ray vision of what they are fighting about.
Mark, let's talk about the implications for this, because we know that Russia got involved with Syria.
Assad. Yes.
With Syria, with a view to trying to get access to a port, because Russia wanted the port. So Russia must have some understanding by its very involvement. So I want to look at the Russian implications, because as we know, there's tension between America and Russia. I also want to look at the implications for the United States.
Okay, let's talk about the U.S. first. The misnomer is that America in 1 or 2 years is going to be energy independent. The reason why it's a misnomer is it gives us a totally false sense of security in the following way. If we're energy independent, what does that mean? It means that and forgetting for the moment, Canada is giving us energy. Let's just say inside of America, we're energy independent. We're producing enough gasoline and enough oil to feed our own needs. We live in a world economy. So if for some reason the price of oil goes from 100 to 200 or 300, you haven't gotten a contract with your Exxon Mobil station that you're going to get the same $3.50 gasoline for the next 20 years. You go, and whatever it is, whether it goes up or down, that's what you pay. So what happens is when you have an uptick in oil that could be a catastrophic uptick in oil to $300 a barrel, ExxonMobil is the one who wins, not you. So you're going to have to go to the gas pump and pay $9 a gallon, $10. Who knows what you're going to have to pay in gallon?
That's because Iran would have the monopoly if they become the
well,
ruler.
Let's talk about how Iran becomes a monopoly. Okay. Once you look at the oil and where the oil is, the simplistic way of looking at it is Iran has got a third, Iraq has got a third, and Saudi Arabia has got a third. Or maybe if you just talk about it from a simplistic way, the Sunnis have 50% and the Shia have 50%. Now, what happens is, God forbid, Iran is empowered so that it's able to defeat Saudi Arabia and control its oil resources as well. Because once you see the geographic area that was going to be controlled by Iran through to the Mediterranean, all of a sudden Saudi Arabia gets it's a very scary thing for Saudi Arabia. And especially if, God forbid, Iran gets a nuclear weapon.
That's
okay?
the key. That's key
because
too.
This nuclear weapon could give them the game changer device to be able to defeat Saudi Arabia. And let me give you an example. Let's say Saddam Hussein had a nuclear weapon and he had attacked Kuwait. How could we have defended Kuwait? Because we would have had to have gone in there with troops and he'd have a nuclear weapon. God only knows what Saddam Hussein would have done. So it in fact gives him a defense to a conventional type of attack. So if Iran were to control the Saudi oil, then what in effect happens is OPEC, where you have 10 different countries inside of OPEC trying to sell as much oil as possible, all of a sudden becomes IranPEC, where it is the only country that holds all of the oil. And therefore they could dictate the price of oil everywhere in the world. So that's the real danger, for Iran to turn into a monopoly over the Black Gold Triangle.
Thank you. We're breaking now. We'll be back to explain
This update from Fox News Radio on WVOX Worldwide.
Fox News Radio, I'm Paul Stevens. Secretary of State John Kerry urging Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to give Sunni Muslims a greater say in a new government to quell ongoing insurgent violence. Kerry also promising U.S. aid for Iraq's military.
The support will be intense, sustained, and if Iraq's leaders take the necessary steps to bring the country together, it will be effective.
Secretary Kerry in Baghdad, that aid including enhanced intelligence and munitions. The United Nations saying the last 8% of Syria's declared chemical weapons have been removed.
But Western intelligence sources say the Syrian government has not disclosed all of its arsenal and fear the regime could rebuild its stockpile. There is also grave concern over recent deadly chlorine gas attacks that have killed scores of civilians in the war.
Fox's Jonathan Wachtel. Fox News. We report, you decide.
The ultimate in ground transportation. Now in their third year, bigger and better in Westchester and beyond. The one and only Green Team Taxi in New Rochelle. Featuring energy-efficient vehicles and 10-passenger vans ready to take you anywhere you want to go. And nobody does airports like Green Team Taxi. Open 24/7 for any and all of your transportation needs. With drivers who are courteous and really know the roads. Green Team Taxi, the ideal way to travel to all airports, corporate events, and anywhere you have to go. Why is Green Team the best? Very simple, because Green Team Taxi cares. When they say they're going to be there, they'll be there. So call them at 914-576-1200, 576-1200. Credit cards accepted in the car, no minimums. Now in Westchester and beyond, the only way to travel is with the professionals at the Green Team, now celebrating their third year. The Green Team, saving the planet one ride at a time. Green Team Taxi, 914-576-1200.
Hi, this is Russell McLeod inviting you to join me on Sunday mornings at 6 for Your Time of Hope. People quit for a lack of hope. Others die because they could hold on no longer. God understands our humanity so well that He sent His servants to bring healing from the disease of hopelessness, new life, to replace the old one, cleansing from the filth of the past, and to rid us of the demons that cut us off. The Bible says we are saved by hope. My friends, join me for your time of hope, Sunday mornings at 6 on 1460 WVOX.
Now with your latest up-to-date forecast, here's Steve Pellettieri's Eye on Weather, exclusively on WVOX Worldwide.
Sunny skies across the area during the afternoon. Our temperatures reaching the lower 80s. South winds at 5 to 10, gusting to 20 at times. Tonight is going to be mostly clear for this evening, becoming partly cloudy overnight. Nighttime lows down near 60. Tuesday's weather's looking partly sunny in the morning, then becoming mostly cloudy with our highs in the lower 80s. And Tuesday night, cloudy. A chance of some showers or an isolated thunderstorm overnight. Nighttime lows in the mid-60s. The outlook for Wednesday calling for cloudy weather, some scattered showers and thunderstorms. It'll be a warm, humid day with our highs in the middle to upper 70s. And Thursday, early clouds, then becoming partly sunny near 80. Friday and Saturday looking sunny near 80 degrees each day. I'm meteorologist Steve Pellettieri for WVOX Worldwide and WVIP HD.
Local and vocal on the Forum at 1460.
Now back to The Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX with Rabbi Amiel Wall, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Israel of New Rochelle, and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman. Now, once again, The Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX.
You're with Barbara Fix today, filling in for The Rabbi and the Judge. Please call us if you're listening in at 914-636-0110 if you have any questions on the crisis in the Middle East. We have with us Mark Langfan. He is an attorney. He's a real estate man, graduated top degrees at Cornell and Boston University, and he has an incredible insight into what's happening in the Middle East. And it would appear that America's made some significant mistakes that's got us into what could be a very dire situation. To summarize for our listeners, those who have joined us, Mark is explaining the critical triangle of oil where Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia border on each other, and that is the triangle of oil, which the fighting is occurring for the oil to empower whichever country gets it. It looks like Iran is being empowered now to create a Shiite caliphate, which would give them a whole area where they could get weapons all the way to a port, the port in Syria, give them access to wherever they want to go to take over critically a large part of the world. They are developing nuclear weapons, and Mark and I were just discussing, Mark, that we should never have pulled out of Iraq to a full extent, as we are now realizing. We should have helped the uprising in Iran, and we should absolutely stop nuclear weapons, empowering Iran to threaten not only the Middle East, but to threaten the whole world. And what will happen is, with an Iranian Shiite caliphate, we will be in trouble. We were talking about the price of oil, because if the oil that's now in the hands of OPEC becomes almost controlled, the price gets controlled by Iran, American oil will shoot through the roof, the likes of which we have never seen before. So we cannot be complacent and say that we are living in a place where we could have our own oil. I think we have, at the moment, breaking news as we're going on. Call us if you need to speak to us. Mark, what is your view? What is your prognosis? I think you should be speaking to everybody in Congress and giving the real skinny, as we call it, on what is happening.
Well, the prognosis is we have to take one small step back, and that is before Obama came into power, one would have said America was an absolute, unequivocal ally of Saudi Arabia. Now, I am Jewish, and I'm the first to say Saudi Arabia is not a perfect country. Far from it. However, with all of their imperfections, they are not the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world.
Now.
Even
though we held them kind of responsible for 9/11, but so much has changed.
The holding them responsible for 9/11 is different than it being a state sponsor of terrorism, where the leading politicians in the country are openly saying, we want to annihilate Israel and we want to annihilate the United States. There may have been, and there was, funding for jihadists in Saudi Arabia, but you're not seeing the Saudi king saying they want to annihilate Israel and they want to annihilate the United States. So however bad Saudi Arabia is, they pale in comparison to a country like Iran that is a state sponsor of terrorism. So the last thing you want to do is, if you have the Shiite part of OPEC and you have the Saudi part of OPEC competing with each other, and having a half interest in each, having a half interest in the triangle, and sort of dividing the oil between them. The last thing you want to do is help Iran control the triangle and strengthen Iran. But since Obama has come into power, there in effect has been a 100% sea change in the basic notion that Saudi Arabia is a pillar of the United States' stability in the Middle East. In fact, one could say, the way Obama has been treating them, they're an enemy of the United States. And the key point here was in 2002, way before Obama was ever a United States senator, he gave a speech where he said, I'll tell you who my enemies are in the Middle East. My enemies, and you got to remember, this is in 2002, where you have Egypt, which was in a peace agreement with Israel and not perfect, but stable. And you have Saudi Arabia, again, not perfect, but not saying they want to annihilate Israel and the United States. Obama said his two enemies in the Middle East were Egypt and Saudi Arabia. This is in 2002.
Ignorance, total ignorance, or
2002.
More worse, right?
So he comes into power, and he in effect destabilizes the whole region by becoming a pro-Iranian president, and really an anti-Saudi Arabian president, thereby empowering the Shia to try to have completed this caliphate running from Iran westward to the Mediterranean, which also, by the way, includes Lebanon. And so what's really going on here is there's really been a sea change in the alliances in the Middle East, in that all of a sudden the Sunnis actually are saying, gee whiz, I've got a lot in common with the Israelis. The Sunnis don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and they don't want Iran to be able to exercise hegemony over South Lebanon, and over Syria. So what this has done is it has really created a under-the-radar alliance, if you will, de facto alliance between Israel, Jordan, and the Sunni kingdoms of the Persian Gulf.
America's become on the wrong side. I mean,
it's coming in on exactly the wrong side.
Instead of helping Israel, it's hindered Israel. It's focused on ridiculous things like where people are living, as opposed to giving Israel bunker busters and saying, halt the nuclear program in Iran, as you did in Iraq, which was a miracle what Israel did. And of course it was condemned at the time, but that saved the world. Israel needs to save the world once again, because America's not saving the world. Only Israel has the existential reason to stop the nuclear weapons, but it needed America's help. Instead of America helping, Obama gave the secrets that Israel had made a deal for landing rights to assist it in stopping the Iranian nuclear weapon system. So we have had a real setback, unfortunately, in the Middle East with this president.
And you're seeing the real result of that, because when the Sunnis in Western Iraq felt disempowered, what happens? They invite Al-Qaeda back. They say the only people, because the Sunnis in Western Iraq didn't want Al-Qaeda there. What happened was when you had the Sunni the awakening in 2007, they helped America get rid of the Al-Qaeda because America told them, oh, we're going to protect you against the Shia. So when we left lock, stock, and barrel, we left all of these, we double-crossed the Sunnis in Western Iraq. And in effect, we double-crossed Saudi Arabia. And so what you are seeing is the logical consequence of Obama's double cross of the Sunnis in Western Iraq and in Saudi Arabia. And they are hopping angry. And
so Al-Qaeda has got stronger.
They got
we
stronger
now have
because
other
they
organizations like ISIS coming in. I mean, we have just got a proliferation of radical organizations because we have never done anything to take care of the threats as they have arisen. It's just been turn your back on this one, turn your back.
Double cross this one, double cross that one.
I mean, the only thing that I see what Obama did it was to take out Mubarak in Egypt and empower the Muslim Brotherhood, and Egypt had to actually undo the damage done by Obama and say the Muslim Brotherhood, who are in fact Obama's closest friends, and say, no, this is a terrorist organization. We don't care if the President of the United States likes his Muslim Brotherhood pals, but they are a terrorist organization. So we have a little bit of a problem here, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do an about-face, and because we don't acknowledge what we've done wrong. When I say we, the administration, and we're going to take a little break now and come back and maybe move on to a couple of other topics that I have questions for you in your role, Mark. Thank you so much.
From Fox News Radio on WVOX Worldwide.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. A federal court has released what had been a secret memo justifying deadly drone strikes overseas.
Al-Qaeda leader and American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki died in a drone strike in Yemen in September of 2011.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland.
The Justice Department defends killing al-Awlaki on the argument that Congress authorized the use of force against al-Qaeda after the 9/11 attacks. The memo calls al-Awlaki a continued and imminent threat.
Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S. will provide Iraq with advanced intelligence and other help to fight Islamic militants.
The support will be intense, sustained, and if Iraq's leaders take the necessary steps to bring the country together, it will be effective.
Kerry also urging Iraq to install a new parliament. The Supreme Court turning down Wisconsin's bid to start enforcing a law forcing abortion providers to have hospital admitting privileges. That's while a fight over the law plays out in lower courts. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Fox News Early Prime, breaking down business news and its impact on your bottom line. Your World with Neil Cavuto.
That's how I do business. That's why I am business.
Bold positions and brash opinions on the topics America is buzzing about. The Five.
How do you think this will set in with the American people?
This will be the pulse of the nation.
Washington insight and political know-how from the best in the Beltway. Special report with Brett Baer.
The epicenter of the political world is here.
The #1 place for fair and balanced coverage. Fox News Channel.
What's wrong with working hard to make our lives and our kids' lives better? Nothing. At Fox Business, we don't have a problem with success. We have a very big problem with those who get in the way of it. We don't come out of the box bashing those who make money, just the politicians stealing it and the bureaucracies wasting it. We're not just sitting behind a desk. We're out in the field, on the floor, with the folks. Because when a story moves forward, so do we.
Fox Business, the power to prosper. Check your local listings.
Whitney Media's WVOX is very proud of the relationship we have with churches in Westchester and the Bronx. Some of those churches have been with us for over 40 years, spreading the good news of the gospel to listeners all over the metropolitan area. To encourage those who preach the word, WVOX has for years set aside valuable one-hour time slots on Saturday and Sunday at our very reasonable and greatly discounted local religious rates. to learn more about how this unique station, one of the most honored in the country, can amplify the magnificent voice of your pastor and news about your own congregation, call David O'Shaughnessy, our Executive Vice President at our Westchester headquarters, 914-235-3279. All denominations of worship may qualify for WVOX's special religious rates. To amplify the voice of your pastor, call David O'Shaughnessy during the week at 914-235-3279 or email david@wvox.com.
Good Morning Westchester with John Marino, 6 to 9 a.m. on VOX.
WVOX.
Now back to the Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX with Rabbi Amiel Wall, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Israel of New Rochelle, and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman. Now, once again, the Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX.
You're listening to Barbara Fix. The Rabbi and the Judge are not here today, and I have with me a wonderful guest, Mark Langfan, who understands the Middle East and the implications of the commodities. He understands water, he understands oil, and we've been talking about the Middle East. Mark, what are the implications for Israel in all of this?
Well, up to now, we've been spending this hour where almost everything has had nothing to do with Israel. So now I want to pivot a little bit in that up to now we've really been talking about the Shiite-Sunni fault line, which basically runs through the middle of Iraq, down the Persian Gulf, with Iraq and Iran to the east, and Saudi Arabia and all the kingdoms to the west. Now I want to talk about a little different fault line, which is the fault line between Western civilization and this Muslim, whether it's divided or it's one Shiite caliphate or it's fractured. There are approximately in the Middle East 370 million Muslims, meaning we're not talking about those people in the Muslims in India or Pakistan or Nigeria, just sort of in the Middle East, from Iran westward. And when you look at it, people, for instance, say, well, how am I connected? What's it to me? Well, for instance, if you're Greek, or if you're from Cyprus, or if you're Spanish, I'm going to now explain how Israel's being on that dividing line is actually very important to Cyprus, very important to Greece, and in fact, important to the United States and the world. But I'm going to go in reverse. I'm going to really quote what is the most often quoted quote about Israel, which is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is the core of instability in the Middle East. Now, I'm not going to, it's almost a joke seeing what's going on between the Shias and the Sunnis to even raise that, but it's still important for the following reason. Once you understand where Israel is in this whole scheme of things, something very simple pops out in that you have 370 million Muslims in the Middle East, and then you have 11 million Greeks to the west in the Mediterranean. And believe it or not, the only non-Muslim country that stands between this 370 million Muslims and the 11 million Greeks that we are under the United States contract under NATO, the treaty under NATO, we are obligated to defend this 11 million Greeks. The only non-Muslim country is Israel. So let's just have a Newtonian mind experiment. Let's pluck Israel out of the Middle East. We're told that it's the cause of instability in the Middle East. Well, let's pluck it out. Let's just say we give the 6 million Jews visas to God only knows where, and so there's no Israel. So under the theory, we've then solved the instability in the Middle East. Well, if there's no other Muslim country between the 370 million Muslims and Greece, who's going to stop those Muslims from going westward into Greece? But it's even more acute in Cyprus, because as Barbara was talking about before, right now, Cyprus and Israel share a natural gas field under the water in the Eastern Mediterranean. And so Israel is sharing all of this oil wealth with, or all of this gas wealth with Cyprus. And Cyprus only has 1 million Christians. 1 million Christians live on Cyprus. So ask yourself a question. If Israel was not there to share and be friendly with Cyprus, and instead Cyprus, this 1 million Christians who practically don't have an army or navy or air force, are surrounded by 370 million Muslims, what is going to happen to Cyprus?
With Turkey,
With
which
Turkey
is moving,
already having invaded the north of Cyprus and coveting the whole of Cyprus. So, and Cyprus is not a NATO country. It's an EU country. It's not a NATO country. So all of a sudden, you realize that Israel is in fact protecting Cyprus and the Greek Christians on Cyprus. Israel is protecting the our NATO ally in Greece. So it's the exact opposite. Israel is not the cause of instability in the Middle East. Israel is the cornerstone of stability in the Middle East. And in fact, Israel today is protecting in no small way Jordan, because you've got this ISIS going like a wildfire, and Jordan has one border that it does not have to worry about anyone bothering it from, and that's Israel. Not only is Israel not bothering it, Israel has protected Jordan in the past, because when the father of the current brutal dictator, Bashar Assad, when his father, Hafez al-Assad, wanted to attack Jordan in 1970, Israel told Assad that if you cross the border, you are not going to have any tanks left. So he said, thank you, I won't cross the border. So Israel has in effect been protecting and giving freedom of religion and freedom of rights to everyone who is living not only in Israel, but in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, however you want to call it, the mountains of Judea and Samaria, the occupied territories, whatever your predilection is. The Arab Muslims and Christians in the West Bank have more freedom of religion, freedom of worship, freedom of communication, of assembly than anybody, certainly in Syria or Iraq or Iran or Saudi Arabia.
That is a big issue, Mark, because the Christians are being targeted everywhere, from the Copts in Egypt. I mean,
this is exact. So Israel's order of battle is
protecting
Christianity and Islam and Sunni Islam. So one has to look at this and understand that Israel is on this fault line between the West and this Islamic boiling pot of what we don't know which way it is going to veer. But if history is any judge, the way it's been veering, it is trajectory of a terrible... Okay.
Okay.
We have a caller.
And I want to return to Lebanon, which was a bastion of Christianity.
Yes.
A caller, hello. Give us your call. What is your question?
Good morning, good afternoon, and very grateful for this educated discussion, Jim Kaloran. You know,
thank you for calling.
No, not at all. And I direct Habitat for Humanity, and we always say if all the religions of the world that said they love God work together, then there'd be no problems, right?
Exactly.
But you know, and on a day like today, here's part of the challenge. We're so oil dependent as a country, and you know, today we're the only building in downtown New Rochelle with solar panels on it that we are reverting. We're making money, you know, going back to the grid, and this is not to take away the importance of the gift of Israel and the gift of the people, but we're so oil dependent as a country that that's part of our defense should be trying to change to alternative energy. And I know it may sound myopic, but really, as we know, it's so much as what we do over there is based upon our oil interests. And I'll hang up now, but I'm grateful for your guys' show. I listen to it often, and I know Rabbi and the judge, and you guys are doing a good job. So as we pray for peace and a safe Israel and a safe world, also I hope that we will see that as part of the solution to really diversify our energy because we are so glutted by the dependency upon oil. So,
well, I would love to say that we could really wean ourselves off of oil. But the reality is you could build all of the solar panels in the world. We are still in no small part driven by the cost of oil and what your clothing. You can't make make clothing.
Right,
there's a tons of things that are interrelated.
Plastic,
so
we know
no
that,
one.
But habits have to change, and that's unless we get to that point in some ways, because there are countries that are going to have no cars in certain cities, and our look at Germany, the difference that it's the number one solar country in the world. So again, it's not the only issue, and I agree there's so much that goes into oil, but we can change that, and we have to.
Thank you, Jim. We ending. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you so much for your call.
And Mark, you have one final comment before we wrap up here?
Visit my website, look at the maps and understand them, and call me if you have any questions.
The website is?
marklangfan.com.
Right. Thank you so much for all your wisdom, and thank you so much
Barbara.
to WVOX.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. God bless you. And thank you all the listeners.
You've been listening to The Rabbi and the Judge on 1460 WVOX with Rabbi Amiel Wall, the Rabbi Emeritus of Temple Israel of New Rochelle, and the Honorable Judge Sam Fredman. Tune in again next Monday afternoon at 1 for The Rabbi and the Judge.